Good morning, and welcome to Lesson 2, Video 15. So here's the deal. This video isn't gonna really make sense unless you're looking at the latest version of the free PDF entitled The First Set of Lesson Texts. To figure out where to get the link to download that, you'll want to look below this video. Now, if you don't see a bunch of links below this video, there's a simple fix. Simply find the little teeny YouTube icon right below my finger, give that a click or two. It'll take you to the dedicated YouTube page. About an inch or so below the video, there'll be a little button that says Show More. Click that. It'll reveal a whole bunch of links. The first link will read, the series of 52 lessons begins with Meditation Lesson 1, Video 1. The link below that will take you to the page with all the other links. With all the links for all the videos of Lesson 1 and Lesson 2 and Lesson 3. Go there. Go to that page. Because these lessons build on top of each other like stacking Oreo cookies or like stacking Legos. And they're not going to make sense unless you've watched them all. So do yourself a favor. You can get caught up pretty quick. If you watch 1 or 2 videos a day, you'll get caught up in no time. But start from the beginning. Okay, so everyone else has seen all the previous videos. And you're already looking at the lesson text. Let me get my lesson text handy on my desktop. There we go. So we're on page 15, in case there's a numbering debacle. Page 15 begins, of course, with 3 links, and after that it reads, He is brilliant, white, and radiates the 6 lights of white, green, yellow, blue, red, and black. Now, if that's what you see, great, you're on the right page. If not, look a little before, a little after, find the page. That's not too difficult. Okay, so jump down to the 3rd quatrain. A quatrain is simply a collection of 4 lines. The 3rd quatrain reads, Adorned with ornaments of silks and jewels, his left shoulder covered by a deerskin, Amitabha hovers above his head. His 2 feet are in the Lotus Posture. So what I would like to do right now is debunk 2 myths. Let's start with the first one. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, one of my precious teachers, one of my dear teachers, is Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who's one of the late teachers of the 14th Dalai Lama. In his commentary, The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones, he explained that the significance, the symbolic significance of seeing Chenrezig sitting with his legs in the Lotus Posture, and of course in Tibet they call it the Vajra Posture, but in America, yoga came to America decades before Tantric Buddhism did. So when push comes to shove, I'll use terminology that Americans are already familiar with, and Americans are already familiar with the phrase, the Lotus Posture. So what is the symbolic significance of Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of Compassion, Kuan Yin? What is the significance, the symbolic significance of Chenrezig sitting in the Lotus Posture? The way the 2 legs weave reminds us that both Samsara and Nirvana are quote-unquote of the same taste. Well, gee, that sounds beautiful, but what does that mean? Glad you asked. What it means is this. All the things, beings, and phenomena that we experience in Samsara are empty of anything permanent to grasp. They're full of change. And they're empty of anything separate to grasp. They're full of interdependence. It's just that simple. And the same thing with all the things, beings, and phenomena of Nirvana. Those things, those experiences are also empty of anything separate to grasp, because everything is interdependent. And they're empty of anything permanent to grasp, because everything is changing. Everything is in a constant state of flux. The change may be very rapid, as it is on the quantum level, or maybe very slow, as it is on the galactic level, but change is there. If you don't ask me, just trust your eyes. We see the seasons change, we see the sun rise and set, we see the moon wax and wane. We put our hands on our chest and feel our ribcage swell and sink. We are surrounded by an ever-changing universe. So none of this requires any dogma or blind faith. So, having said that, I want to dispel the first of two myths. There is this idea that when you're fully enlightened, you don't suffer. Well, let's look at three great spiritual masters. Buddha, who founded what he called the Dhammavina, which later was described as Buddhism. Lao Tzu, who founded Taoism, and of course Jesus Christ, who founded what would later be called Christianity. All three of these people experienced sufferings, both at the beginning of their lives and at the end of their lives. So we see that just because you're enlightened, or just because you're a Taoist immortal, or just because you or the Christ, doesn't mean you're immune to suffering. That's a big deal. So what then is the basic definition of Samsara and Nirvana? If Nirvana is not Shangri-La, if Nirvana is not some paradise where you never suffer, what is it? Samsara is simply the state where we are subject to the tyranny of suffering. What's suffering? Does it have to be over the top? Does it have to be grandiose? Does it have to be like some, action movie blockbuster? No. Whenever we experience anything, whenever we fail to get what we want when we want it, that's suffering. It can be very subtle. Whenever we don't get to keep what we like for as long as we'd like to, that's suffering. Whenever we endure that which we do not enjoy, guess what? That's suffering too. So suffering can be a very subtle thing. So samsara is the state where we are subject to the tyranny of sufferings. They affect our choices, they affect our words, they affect the way we communicate, they affect our actions, and that creates a lot more suffering. That multiplies the suffering. Nirvana, there's still sufferings, but they're not the boss of us. They don't control our decisions, they don't control our communication, they no longer control our actions. They're still there, we still feel their effect, but we're no longer their slave. That's the liberation the Buddha offers us. Now, I promised you I would dispel two myths. So now it's time for the second one. There is this myth in yoga, and there's a myth in Hinduism, and there's a myth in Buddhism, that if you can't sit in the lotus position, you're not truly spiritual. And if you can't sit in the lotus position, you can't be a Buddha. Folks, you can become a Buddha if you're flexible. You can become a Buddha if you're not. You can become a Buddha if you're arthritic. You can become a Buddha, heaven forbid, if you're an amputee or a paraplegic. So don't let the fools get you down. Don't let the turkeys get you down. There's always going to be somebody who tries to prove to you that they're better than you because they're more flexible or they're more healthy. And don't listen to the fools. If someone can't give you a hand up on the spiritual path, if the only way they can make themselves feel good is to make you feel bad, then they're poisonous. Get away from them. You don't have to hate them, but get away from them. So now that we've talked about the lotus position, I'm going to take a moment to demonstrate various sitting positions that we can use when we meditate. Now, one of the reasons I'm teaching you this is in Lesson 1, we learned our first spiritual practice, and it was primarily verbal. In Lesson 2, we are learning a practice that is more than 50% silent. And when you feel comfortable with it, it's an excellent opportunity to sit on the floor and meditate. There's nothing wrong with sitting in a chair. But there's something very special about sitting on the floor if you can. Now, if you can't, if you are stuck in your chair because of health challenges, then make the most of it. When you're sitting in a chair, make sure you're not leaning back unless you have to. I mean, if you're prostrate with exhaustion, to sit badly is better than not at all. But if you can, move your tushy towards the front of the chair. Tushy is a Yiddish word for rump. Keep your shins perpendicular to your thighs. Put the flat of your foot on the ground, and sit up straight. That is really, really useful. I recommend either hands in the lap or hands up to the side. That's hands in the lap or hands up to the side. Many Mahayana practitioners and many Taoist practitioners touch the thumbs. I don't like that. The Theravadins don't touch the thumbs. And there is some evidence that the whole thumb-touching craze was because of the Taoist influence on Mahayana Buddhism when it ventured up the Silk Route into China. So I don't like that because I find it interferes with the energy work. It causes too much energy to congest at the root of the nose, the place between the eyebrows. I prefer that my students have their energy moving around rather than congesting. So I'm going to move the chair and open up my yoga blanket and demonstrate some floor-sitting postures for the yogis and for the regular slobs like all of us. Give me a moment. I prefer using a yoga blanket. I ordered mine from Amazon.com. There are links in my site for this stuff. It's easier on the environment than the materials they put in yoga mats. Any of these are washable, which is wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to start with the easiest and move on. The most basic posture is a seated samurai posture, also known as the lower lion's pose. It's very simple. I'll show you the side view. You just basically sit on your heels and your knees are open. Sit on your heels and the knees are open. Now you'll notice that there's an overlap. I like to put the right foot on the bottom and the left on top. Some people do the opposite. The Taoists would say the right must always be on the bottom if you're a male, the left must always be on the bottom if you're female. But I'm not a Taoist, so I say it's a variable for you to explore. Now this is important. Every time I tell you that it's a variable for you to explore, don't fall into the newbie trap of thinking, whoa, I'm going to figure this out one time and I'll never deviate from it. No. Remember, that's rigidity and that's a trap. It's far better to say, at this moment, this feels best. Perhaps later on, something else will feel best. Surround yourself with limitless possibilities. Do not build a rigid jail cell around you that always ends badly. And of course, it reminds me of the Edgar Allan Poe, The Cask of Amontillado. Remember that, where a man poisoned another man, and the poison guy woke up to find himself chained to a wall, and his captor was building a wall in front of him so that he could quietly starve to death and die. So, yes, bad thing to do. So let us not become the prisoners of our own preconceptions. So here's another fun way to sit. I like to call this the Ganesh Posture, borrowing from Hindu culture. You sit with your tush on the meditation blanket, and the soles of your feet touch together. Now, for me, personally, I don't find this super comfortable. Some people do. Bless their hearts. That's great. From here, we can move into the easy pose. That's what it's called, the easy pose. Once again, it's a pose I don't like, but for some people, they enjoy it. So, what some people would do is they would bring the left leg in, the right leg on the outside, and they'd sit like this. A Taoist variation of that would be to move the heels so the heels are supporting the femur or the thigh bone. Which seems to be a lot more sound. So once again, the right thigh is resting on the left heel. The left thigh is resting on the right heel. So many people enjoy this. And of course, many people prefer to put the left on the outside and the right on the inside. The same basic deal. Not my favorite sitting pose, but it's nice to have options. There's a myth perpetrated by our Zen brothers and sisters in Japan that once you assume a posture, you do not get out of the posture for the entire sitting time. Whether it's 20 minutes or 40 minutes or 60 minutes or 120 minutes, you don't move. My Chan brothers in China vehemently disagree with it. They say, no, this is not asceticism. This is not torture. You're not training yourself to be a statue. You sit in a posture, and you sit in a posture that supports your spine and your mind. Once the posture is no longer beneficial, you switch to another posture. Remember, we live in a universe where everything affects everything, and everything's always changing. To ignore that is to ignore Buddha's teachings on a fundamental level. And nobody wants to do that. Okay, so we've explored the easy pose. Now let's explore the quarter lotus, the half lotus, and the full lotus. Now, one is not more spiritual than the other. It's a question of what's more comfortable for you in the moment. Now you can say, hey man, lying on my back, sitting on my side and being fed grapes when someone fans me with an ostrich feather. That's comfortable. Well,
that's great. Sparky. But it has to be also effective for meditation.
And let's face it, lying on your back is a portal to falling asleep. Now, if you memorized all your meditation techniques and you're too ill to sit up, then it's better than nothing. But we're going for the optimal blend of comfort and, utility, what works. So, let me show you right now something called, I'm not sure, there's different debates. Some people call this the quarter lotus. I really like it a lot. This is my favorite sitting posture. If you look at Theravadan sculptures, let me make sure my head's not completely chopped off. If anyone remembers the 1970s version of The Omen, you'll get why that's kind of creepy. Okay, so, are my feet visible? Let's see, can you see the feet? Good. So here's the deal. If you look at statues or statuary from Theravadan cultures, you'll see the Buddha sitting like this. And you'll see that the top shin is parallel to the bottom shin. So when I sit, typically I just sit like this, and when this gets tired, I just, whoopsie, without flashing the audience, I switch this way. And when this gets tired, I switch this way. Back and forth, back and forth. I tell you the truth, I've been doing this for a very long time, for many, many lifetimes. And let's face it, if shifting your leg position completely shatters your meditation, then number one, your meditation is rigid, and we talked about rigidity in our first and second lesson. And number two, you're doing something wrong. We do not live in a vacuum. We live in a world full of distractions. And so we must embrace a meditation method that takes that into account and that is resilient and can roll with the punches. So, this is the quarter lotus position. It's my personal favorite. I can assure you, using something as modest and unimpressive as the half lotus, you can accomplish full enlightenment. It can accomplish full enlightenment using all these postures. Now, some people might have difficulty getting their legs parallel. Don't force it. It's not a question of having loose knees. Our knees are like our elbows. They're hinged joints. They're not designed to be super laterally flexible. What helps our legs to come together is the looseness of our hips. Because our hips are ball joints, just like our shoulders are. So, if you really want to sit in the quarter lotus posture, just give it time. In time, your body will relax. We don't force it. We just relax and let the natural processes occur. So I'm going to take a moment to adjust my robes once again, so as not to flash anybody. So, now we're going to do the half lotus, and you can do it with the right leg on the bottom. What I like to do is, I like to maybe put my knee in a circle for a few minutes, and then rest the top of my left foot upon my right thigh. Once again, there should be no pain in your knee. If the articulation comes from the ball joint of the pelvis. And of course, this can be, while I'm here, let me show you how to get to a full lotus. And well, once this becomes comfortable, then you take your bottom leg out, let gravity do its magic. And once gravity has allowed this knee to rest comfortably on the ground, then you can bring this outer right leg on top. And this is how the Buddhas kind of sit in Mahayana statuary and art. It's just symbolic. It doesn't matter. Now I'm going to show you the other way for those of you who begin with the left foot on the bottom. Careful not to flash my underoos. Left leg on the bottom, right leg on top. This is a quarter lotus. Move to a half lotus, the right leg. The right foot rests upon the left thigh. When this is no longer a challenge, the left foot comes out and the right knee gently is pulled to the earth by gravity. When this is comfortable, you'll intuitively be drawn to sit in a lotus posture. Remember, there's nothing special about the lotus posture except it really impressed the tourists. But we're not here to impress the tourists. We're here to become Buddhas. We're here to learn how to deal with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. We're here to learn how to surf reality so we can become the happy campers, the peaceful campers, the loving campers that we were born to be. So let's see. We covered kneeling samurai, also known as lion's pose. We covered Ganesh pose. We covered quarter, half, and full lotus. And of course we did corpse pose. I think that's just about everything. I thank you for your time and your kind attention. Before you go, I want to remind you to click the subscribe button and check the box next to it, which will allow you to receive email notifications of each video. Check the like button and also click the share buttons. Now, we talked about the links below the video. One of the links will take you to the registration page so you can reserve your seat for the next series of weekly webinars. When do they begin? Monday, the 7th of January. I'll see you there. May you and yours be healthy and happy. Om Mani Padme Hum. Bye-bye. Oy vey!